I think I'll get started when I was about 2 years old. To give you a sense of it, I stabbed her in the ankle with a fork. And for those of you who know me, I'm not a very violent person. I think I just wanted to see what would happen. Wasn't good. My sister still brings this up in fights. She also would sit on my head regularly as a kid. One time in elementary school, she put me in a sleeping bag and shook me around with one of her friends, and they called it a haunted house. It was scary, that was true. But we never really had like a close, tight-knit, easy relationship. Gina and I have always dealt with things super differently. So when we were little, despite the little violent skirmishes, we would still play together. We had these 2 teddy bears that were really special to us from Vermont, and we named them. We even had a wedding ceremony for them, where my family went up and we had this big thing. We bought candy and stacked it together like a little cake. It was disgusting. It was like sweet tarts covered in chocolate, and then like my sister had made a little wedding dress for one of the teddy bears. And it was this really special, beautiful moment. And then in the next year, she went to middle school, and she stopped playing with me. And I am a super extrovert. I am the only extrovert in my family. And so I remember sitting outside my sister's door and knocking and knocking and knocking, and she just wouldn't open it. She got to a point where she was just like, I have had enough. I'm not giving you this attention. And it broke my 4th grade heart that did not understand why she wouldn't just want to play with me. Sort of my first memory of feeling like the world was against me. Like there's nothing, my sister won't play with me. And for those of you, if anyone's seen Frozen, my sister, when it came out, she has blonde hair and blue eyes and is, nice and icy, and I'm very bubbly and redheaded, and would sit outside her door being like, do you want to build a snowman? And the answer was always no. So she took me to that movie. It was like pretty close to home for me. And then as we got into middle school, I started to experience depressive tendencies. So I'm a person who struggled with mental health issues since I was about 10, shortly after not being able to play with my sister. And my reaction to it was I had to know everything about it. I was diagnosed with adolescent major depression, which happens for about 9 months, 2 years apart. It happens twice usually, like 5th grade, 7th grade. I had exactly that. I did all this research. I gave a presentation to my 7th grade class to tell them, you should find out and get help you need, because I was like, I'm going to find out everything there is to know about this and like dive deeper into it. So whenever I was going through something, would do it very much out loud. And every time I tried to talk to my sister, she wouldn't respond. Going forward through high school, we had a very functional surface level relationship that would quickly devolve into fights as soon as we got home. My parents are amazing. They both had terrible childhoods that they tried to do everything in their power to do the opposite of. And they didn't know what to do with us. We were fighting all the time. They took us to therapy together. That went okay. And in high school, I started to experience anxiety. And when I say anxiety, I mean to the point where I would get home from school and start shaking, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know what was happening to my body, and it was you hear that world closing in feeling. I would find the smallest space in my house and shake and cry and sort of lose control. And it took me a long time to get to a point and say, hey, maybe I need to do something about this. And this is not something that my sister had any idea. She would call me a diva, or mention us being dramatic. I've been into theater for a long time, so I just had a lot of feelings. And the day before she went to college, I had one of these attacks, and it was huge. And it was like 2 a.m, and I couldn't sleep, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I couldn't call anybody because it was 2 a.m, and most responsible high schoolers are sleeping, not me, almost ever. I very rarely slept. And so I went downstairs and knocked on my sister's door to try and muster the courage to tell her I was scared. And I knocked on her door in the basement, and she opened it, and she literally rolled her eyes at me and told me that she was going to college tomorrow and that she didn't have time for me. And I shut down, closed the door, went upstairs. There was like this massive distancing that happened to us on that day. And she went to college a couple years later. I went to college, didn't really talk about anything. Whenever something big happened in our lives, we had kind of surface level conversations. Every once in a while, a couple times a year, we'd have a really big fight in which my sister, with her very logical brain, would bring up every fight we've ever had since we were 2. So like starting with the fork stabbing, and I was like, I don't remember that, I was 2, like can we move forward? And every time I'd try and say like, hey, we both did things that maybe weren't great, she'd call me a Pollyanna and be like, stop trying to fix this. And so then I would back off, and I got really defensive, and this is all, you know, my having too many feelings to know what to do to express them. And then after her junior year of college, she went away to an internship, and she felt very alone in this. It was a robotics camp, and okay, camp is big. It was like a very prestigious thing where they were programming robots. I should not call it a camp. It was very fancy, and I just don't understand what it is. So I call it a robotics camp, which is maybe you know, all right. So sorry, Gina, whenever you listen to this. There was this girl in particular who was really mean to her, and she felt like an outsider, and then she started shaking and crying and not being able to control her body or her feelings, and she called me, and she said, excuse my French, she said, holy shit, I had no idea. If this was like a fraction of what you were talking about, I'm so sorry. And it blew my mind, because for me it was out of left field to get this phone call from my sister, who my whole life has said, oh, you're just a diva, oh, you're just this. Well, I've been trying, you know, 8 different kinds of therapy to figure out how to get through a day without shaking and crying and feeling like the world is falling in. And so then we got into a couple years of really sort of negotiating our spaces and like figuring out how we process things, and trying to get into deeper conversations, going a little farther, having a big fight, rolling back, going a little farther. And it'd be stuff like talking about movies. My sister works in special effects, so she she just wrapped on Pacific Rim 2, so like small stuff. Nothing like a local theater in New Haven, I mean. So she doesn't like my quote-unquote arty movies. So when I'd want to go see something that's like deep, rich storytelling, and I'm really excited about it, like I was talking to her about Moonlight, and she was like, it's too arty. And I remember being so upset, because I was like, that's not what I get out of that. There's like a real meaning for me, and starting to realize sort of that the way that she and I negotiate space and story is so different. She needs to escape, and I need to dig deeper. So when I was going through all of the feelings of my adolescence, I was trying to dive into it and figure out as much as I could about it, and as much as I could about myself. I still do this. And she needs to run away and take her time to process. I want answers now. She needs to sit with it, and really sit with it, and sometimes for years. I do not have the patience for that, which is something I'm trying to learn. And so a lot of this has actually come very much to a head in the last 6 months. So in the past couple of years, as my sister and I have gone through difficult times, she had, when she was in grad school, she would call me every day, not to talk about anything in particular, but just to like talk about a silly cat she saw on the internet or something to find some kind of comfort. And then last year I had an accident. I was hit by a car while I was riding my bike, and so I spent a lot of time in bed, a lot of time feeling sorry for myself, being mad, feeling still, and she would find little ways to be there for me all the way from Vancouver, Canada, where she lives. So she would send letters. She has sent me an animated animal via Google Chat every day for the last year. I get an elephant or a cat and a monkey being friends, or like, and then I just forward them to all my friends because I want everyone to know how great it is. So that's our primary mode of communication at this point, which is something we've learned. And then this past September, October, my dad got diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And I don't know if anybody's heard of this. I hadn't. It set me down a WebMD rabbit hole of doom. Don't recommend that. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis is something that there is no cause or cure for. It is, my dad's lungs are slowly gonna build up scar tissue until he can't breathe. So this has been a game changer in perspective in so many ways. So, and as if, when it rains, it pours, that wasn't enough. We had 3 dogs we've had for 9 years, and not one, but all 3 of them died a few weeks apart from each other this fall. So they were our family dogs. And then my mom had to have serious hip surgery, all in the matter of about 2 months. And I don't know if any of you have read about what's going on at Longworth Theater right now. It's been a rough couple months. And so my sisters and I have had to, across the country, negotiate what it means to be a family right now in a way that I think we're both hoping we wouldn't have to do for another at least 10 years. And when this first happened, my initial response was like, I have to go home. Like, I don't care what's happening. I've got to get to see my parents. I have to be there. I have to be there for them, figure out what I can do. And I was like, okay, Gina, can you get to Ohio at Thanksgiving? It's Mom's favorite holiday. She's really sad. How can we make this work? And she was like, no, I can't do that. I'm busy. Or like, no, I can't do this. No, I can't do that. And every time it both broke my heart and just made me furious. Like, how can you not care right now? Like, this is huge. Like, there's like a time limit we're dealing with now. Like, how can you not deal with this? And then we had this amazing phone call, which we've both qualified as a not fight, because we were both so proud of ourselves that individually we called Mom afterwards and we're like, guess what? We just didn't fight about this. Like, huge news. And we sat there and I said, I need to deal with how bad this is, and I need to deal with it now, and I need to figure out where I can go. And she said, you know what? I need to take this time and plan my days off and save up for flights for all of next year, because I need to think about long game because of how far away I am, because of the way I process, and I'm not trying to not be there. And we had this conversation where, like, we cannot talk on the phone about this stuff. We just can't, because we'll just start being so infuriated at the way the other one doesn't do what we want. My brain does not work in like a mathematical, logic-y kind of way. It's very all over the place, and that drives her nuts. And I want her to feel things now, and she just can't. That's not how she operates. So we've gotten to this place where we're very suddenly taking care of our parents in a way that we were hoping not to do for a while. Not that we don't want to, but that being there and signing off on wills and powers of attorney and all of these, like the paperwork that comes with illness, has been profoundly stressful. And over Thanksgiving, I was spending time, I was there with them as our final dog was dying over the week of Thanksgiving. And my mom couldn't walk, and my dad was coping with life with his new oxygen tank. And my sister wasn't there. But my sister was on the phone with me every day. My sister was arranging doctor's appointments from Vancouver, trying to figure out who a good person to go to for what might be, how she could arrange things to make things easier from afar, planning. And then Christmas came around, and she did everything from emptying the dishwasher to taking out the trash to making the bed to every little thing that might need to happen. And we got to laugh together. And that we all had to read through the wills and go over powers of attorney. And we sat at the table and stopped and looked at each other for a second, and then decided to do a shot as a family. So the 4 of us did a shot and then played Cards Against Humanity and laughed the rest of the night. Which, oh, sorry, I just hit the microphone. And on the last day of that week we had together, Gina and I were sitting there throwing back some Dark and Stormies, finishing a puzzle, and I said, oh, you know what I really want to do? It's like, what if we had a pillow fort? And my sister looks at me and she goes, all right, and goes back, gets every mattress, pillow, thing she can find, builds an entire pillow fort, and our last night together this past December, we fell asleep watching Harry Potter in a pillow fort. as two grown adult sisters, sort of figuring out how to get through some really tough stuff. And so I look back now at those days where like she closed her door and needed quiet in a way that I didn't understand till like this year, when I've needed quiet in a way I didn't understand. That when I was going through being diagnosed with depression in like when I was like 10 and didn't understand how big of a word that was, my sister was dealing with the fact that she had learning disabilities and had to get through school in a way that seemed so easy to me. While I was having this like sort of every success or failure I had was pretty public. But my sister ate French fries for lunch every day and was a size 6 all through high school, and I started Weight Watchers when I was 14. And we spent our adolescence looking at each other and looking at the strengths the other one had and saying like, wow, must be nice to have everything so easy. Must be nice to just be able to buy a pair of pants, Gina. Or like, must be nice to, be able to just talk in public. She would never do this in a million years. You couldn't pay her enough money to talk in public. And, but those things that we sat and looked and said, oh, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? Now we're at a place where we need those things in each other. And it has taught me so much about how those push and pulls and conflicts can turn into something really beautiful, and that can be really painful, but can both exist in Congress in a way that really relies on each other. And through all of my thinking, why, oh why are we so different? Wouldn't it be nice to have a sister who could just be my friend? Now I couldn't imagine a better one. So that is my story.